Holy City Center Radio. It is episode 55, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Thanks so much for coming back. Sorry, we had a few weeks off after a run of episodes. We had one scheduled. Unfortunately, a guest had to cancel, and that kind of threw things for a loop. But we are back. No guests this week. Just going to play catch up on some of the biggest stories that have been happening over the last few weeks. You know, we mentioned on some previous episodes there was a lot going on, but they were very fluid situations, so I kind of held off talking about anything, just to make sure all the updates came out. And, because of some time between episodes, we didn't want, stale old information. So now we're playing catch up as we close out July and welcome in August. It has been hot as hell in South Carolina, and as I'm sure you've all seen in many, many places around the country and abroad. So hopefully you're staying cool and doing okay. First, just some personal updates. I was able to do some pretty fun things over the last month, specifically the last few weeks. I'll just run down them real quick. The production of Hamilton was in town, and I was able to go check them out. It was so good. I'd seen the Disney Plus recording of the original cast, or most of the original cast, that I'm sure a lot of you have seen as well. And this is the traveling performance, so it's not like Lin-Manuel Miranda was performing or anything, but the cast was amazing. They did an incredible job. The crew, there was live, I don't want to say orchestra. I couldn't see how many were up there, but a decent amount of people. The conductor and everything, and these best of Broadway shows, they call them at the North Charleston Coliseum, or Performing Arts Center, rather. They always seem to do a really, really good job. If you ever have a chance, if there's a play or a musical that you've been wanting to see that's coming through town, do yourself a favor, buy some tickets. They do not disappoint. I rarely see anybody complaining about these performances. So that was great. Was able to relive some 90s glory as well. I went to a concert. The Bare Naked Ladies were the headliners. Gin Blossoms and Toad the Wet Sprocket were the openers. And it was a lot of fun. Honestly, I really only went to see Gin Blossoms. I am a huge fan of, some of their more popular songs. I won't lie, I don't know a ton about the band outside of like this grouping of 5 or 6 songs that I just really, really like and still listen to this day. But it was a lot of fun. Toad the Wet Sprocket were fine. I only knew like one song by them. I didn't really listen to them when I was younger. Gin Blossoms were really good. Bare Naked Ladies were fine. You sometimes hear like that joke, that, some band who's had some massive hits will come out and just like refuse to play the massive hits. And that's sort of what happened with them. Like they opened the show, they played like one of their more popular songs, but not one of the big massive hits they had. And then like the massive center of the set was just a bunch of songs that I didn't know. It seemed like a lot of people in the audience didn't really know. They were fine. The songs were, enjoyable, but they weren't really sprinkling in the songs you really wanted to hear. So at one point I looked over at my friend and I was like, so I really just want to see Gin Blossoms. I'm ready to go whenever you are. If you want to stay, I'm cool. And she was like, nah, I'm ready to go. I was like, okay, cool. And we left. To cap it off, the lead singer had mentioned Darius and Hootie a few times because they went on tour with them a couple summers ago before the pandemic. And we're like, oh, we're happy to be here. And the bassist Dean is here and blah, blah, blah. But then after one song, he goes, all right, I'm going to invite a friend up to help us out in this next song. Ladies and gentlemen, Darius Rucker. And place starts to go nuts. He's like, oh, just kidding. Darius isn't here, guys. Darius isn't here. I'm like, who does that? Like, everybody was so excited for a few seconds before he said, just kidding. And like, that's when I was like, all right, enough of this. So anyway, but it was overall, good time. It was nice to be out and see a show. Tyler Boone, friend of the program, whose music you hear all the time, he held an event at Holy City Brewing in North Charleston. It's called the Homegrown Holy City Beer and Bourbon Festival. First time he's held it. So it was a combination of a bunch of live music, mostly local bands performing throughout the day. And then they also had, the brewery was open. You could go obviously get drinks and buy food. They had some vendors there as well. And then they had Tyler's bourbon, Boone's bourbon, and available for purchase if you wanted it, as well as like a spin-off beer that he teamed with Holy City Brewing that I guess is supposed to, I thought maybe it had a tie into the bourbon, but it really, like maybe they used the barrels or something to age the beer in, but Nothing like that. It was just a regular beer, I guess, that they created. Fortunately, I didn't have a ton of time to talk to Tyler. I caught him real quick, and I wasn't going to stay. It was like a whole, like 1 p.m. to 11 p.m. thing, and I'm getting old. So, and since I'm not out there, boozing, I didn't hang around too long. Just wanted to take in the scene, got to see some good people, some friends, and then called it a day. But it was great to catch Tyler real quick and see that it looked like a pretty well attended event for the first time he's thrown it. So that was cool. Also got to check out the Beyond Van Gogh exhibit, which is over in North Charleston at the convention center, by the Coliseum and Performing Arts Center. This is a cool, traveling art exhibition, immersive look at some of Van Gogh's work. It's still going on. You can still get tickets. It's here for a while, kind of like the Michelangelo Sistine Chapel exhibition that came through. I think that was like a year ago now. But anyway, it was pretty cool. You walk in, there's like some background on Van Gogh, some quotes from him to, as you're getting ready. And then eventually you end up in like the main room where there's all these displays, basically like light projectors that are, projecting different images onto the walls and onto the floor. So it kind of gives you like this immersive experience, like you're like in a painting almost. And they did a really good job of putting his different works up there. And then they would slowly like move. So like there was a portrait of a man, with a pipe with smoke coming out of it, and you could see the smoke like very slowly moving. When they had the self-portraits in Van Gogh, they'd periodically blink. So there's lots of movements and just cool like special effects kind of things that they did, and it was really interesting. Something just a neat way to see art in a different format, and I enjoyed it. So if you have some time, it's definitely worth checking out. Outside of that, finally getting back in the groove of going to the movie theater. I love movies, period, but also love going to the theater. Just love the whole experience, the popcorn and the previews and the whole thing. And, seeing something on a big screen is always cool, too. So I recently saw Thor, Love and Thunder. As everybody knows, I'm a big Marvel fan, so take what I say as a grain of salt, but I really, really enjoyed the film, thought it was great. And then I saw Nope, which is the new Jordan Peele movie, and it was really, really good, up there with his other two films, Get Out and Us. A little bit different, but also a lot of similarities to those films, and I just think it was really, really good. And there's a lot of mystery behind it because the previews didn't really tell you what it's about, and they've kind of kept it secretive, so it was kind of cool going into a movie like having zero expectations or idea of what I was about to see, and it was good. It's like a horror thriller type movie, not gruesome really. Sometimes horror can be a little too much. This is more of the thriller, like edge of your seat, like, what's going to happen type thing, not like a gross out horror film. And it was just really well done as usual. The only other thing is we had some other delays with podcasts and stuff going on because, within my family, we had some health stuff going on. Happy to report that everything is great. Everything is going super well now. And honestly, the situation was best case scenario for the most part. But just really happy that everything is settled there and things seem to be getting back to normal. So I'm excited about that. I will be seeing my family at some point. We're still trying to work out details, whether they're still going to come down here for the summer or if I'm going to head up there. Either way, I'll be seeing them soon, and I'm excited about that. So that's what's been going on here. Quick catch up, and just wanted to share some of the things I've been doing. And now we're going to dive into some of the big stories. I decided to start with a fun one. I was debating if I should save this for the end or not, but no, I'm going to reel you in and trick you into listening to the important things later. So the first one you may have heard about. I don't remember the exact date, and it doesn't really matter. It was over the last couple weeks, and it happened on a weekend. So there is a place downtown called the Forte Jazz Lounge. It is like a jazz bar. It's on King Street I think it's right by where Basil used to be. So that kind of area of King Street. I forget the actual address. But anyway, I've heard good things. I haven't made it there yet. They have performances mostly, towards the weekend. But, we'll have performances throughout the week. Jazz, but sometimes some others as well. I think they've had like salsa music. They've had some pop musicians and things, mostly local artists. And they have like tables, and you can go in there and order food and drinks and the whole thing. So anyway, I've heard really good things about it. But they were involved in kind of a bizarre incident. So they have, as you're walking by the business on King Street, they have like a flat screen TV in their window that like streams whoever's performing on stage. So you can see like the stage. So that basically when people are walking by, they'll be like, oh my gosh, there's this live band in there. Look at the people, wanting to draw people to come in and check it out. Well, one night, I think it was late Saturday night, early Sunday evening, place had closed. All the customers are out. Most of the employees are out. And they forgot to turn off the camera. And right in view of the camera, a gentleman and a coworker who was a woman decided to put on a show. They were doing some adult things, as you can put two and two together, and their adult relations were being broadcast out onto King Street. So as people were walking by and the lights are all out of the business except for the TV, and they're putting on a live sex show, basically. How do we know this? Because the people who walked by, of course, grabbed their cell phones immediately and recorded what was happening. And those video recordings made their rounds on food and beverage Facebook groups, as well as, other groups on the internet. So you may have seen it or at least heard about it. And if you haven't, it's still out there if you are so inclined to check out somewhat grainy footage. But it is very, very clear what is happening. And it has been a mix of hilarity, seeing people's comments and talking about the incident and things like that. But also, the business has been very quiet on it. So, I'm sharing the story because it's funny. It's been talked about. You may have stumbled across it. And I just think it's hilarious, but I don't want people to think poorly of the business. I don't know who these people were. I don't know what their association to the business was, if they're still there, if they're not. But that you may have heard of that late night rendezvous that was being broadcast out on King Street. Just classic Charleston King Street behavior. All right, moving on to the other stories. The big one everyone's been talking about for, it's got to been over a year now, right? The Murdaugh murders. There has been a lot of speculation and things, but now it's all official. Earlier this month, the former Low Country attorney, Alex Murdaugh, pleaded not guilty on July 19th to state charges that he murdered his wife and son. So that's right. They finally have charged him with the murders, which a lot of people speculated was going to end up happening eventually. And he's been in jail, for those who don't remember, for other crimes involving mostly like financial crimes and things. So he's been in jail with like a $7 million bond or something crazy. So he has, he's been there for a long time now, but he has now officially been charged with the murders. So a week before he pleaded not guilty, a Colleton County grand jury indicted him on 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of possessing a firearm during the commission of a violent crime in connection with that June 7th, 2021 shooting of 52-year-old Maggie Murdaugh, his wife, and 22-year-old Paul Murdaugh, his son. The indictments allege that he used 2 different firearms, a rifle on his wife, and then a shotgun on his son. There was no bond for this either, or I shouldn't say either. There's no bond period for this particular crime. So even if he had posted bond for the other crimes, he would be back in jail now. And both sides agreed to a gag order to keep motions that might include evidence sealed, so that way they don't make their way into the media, so that doesn't, what his side is saying, they didn't want that to taint the potential jury pool by seeing all these, salacious headlines of, evidence and things like that. So we're not going to hear too much more until this finally moves to trial. No date has been set in that as far as I've seen. So this story is just picking up, it was nonstop for a while there and then got kind of quiet as we were kind of playing this waiting game, and yep, he's officially been charged. So as usual, local media is covering these things. If you want to stay up to date when you're not listening to the podcast, you can follow me on social media. I share stories from these reporters who've been working it. And of course, there are 2 podcasts out there, one by ABC News that's talking about this, and the most popular one, the Murdaugh Murders podcast with Mandy Matney, I also highly recommend. All right, so that's where we're at with that whole thing, and you know that we're never going to hear the end of it. It's going to be a big deal for a long, long time in these parts. I mean, nationwide too. When he pleaded guilty, I always want to say pled, but I don't think that's technically a word. It made national news. Like, I got a CNN alert, so this is something a lot of people are paying attention to. All right, moving on. Well, let's jump to another South Carolinian man who has behaved badly. I've referenced this a couple times, but the case of Bowen Turner, the 19-year-old South Carolina resident who was sentenced to 5 years probation after being accused of raping a teenager, had his probation revoked and was ordered to register as a sex offender after being arrested for public disorderly conduct. So you guys may remember this. Bowen Turner, he was charged with first-degree criminal sexual conduct for allegedly raping a then 16-year-old girl back in 2019. He pleaded guilty to that crime in April to a reduced charge of assault and battery. And this was a part of a deal that was set with prosecutors. It was widely condemned. People were livid that he, because in addition to what he was on trial for, he had been accused of rape or sexual assault. I don't remember what the official charges were, with two other young women from when he was younger. Similar charges that for different reasons didn't go to trial. So people were just livid that not only was he facing no jail time, he didn't have to register as a sex offender despite being charged with first degree criminal sexual conduct. And you're not supposed to hold things against people, so like he's on trial for one thing, and even though he's been accused of other things, in the court of law, they're not supposed to, if he hasn't been found guilty of those things, you're not supposed to factor in that. So you knew that whatever his charges were going to be, were probably not going to be as big as or not his charges, rather, the penalty would not be as much as you think it would be because of, the public knowing his history, or alleged history, I guess I should say. But this was like even worse than people imagined. So there's a lot of uproar over it. Nothing happened. He got to leave, the courtroom, didn't have to go to jail, didn't have to register as a sex offender. But if he had a probation violation, all that kind of goes out the window. And he made it, to surprising absolutely no one, he made it a month. A month later, he was arrested in Orangeburg after a sheriff's deputy found him intoxicated and walking down a road late at night. He told the deputy that he had 3 drinks at a bar, despite being underage. As I mentioned, he's 19. He was brought to the detention center. So, a little public disorderly conduct, not great, especially for someone on probation. Not the worst of crimes, of course, but, he should have been smarter. But it gets worse. When they brought him to the detention center, Turner threatened a deputy who told him to put on a mask. So when the deputy told him that, Turner supposedly said, "If you try to put that mask on me, I will bite your fucking finger off." Needless to say, that did not go over well. He was charged with violating probation, public disorderly conduct, purchasing or possessing alcohol as a minor, and threatening a public employee, which, as I mentioned at the top, has now negated this whole probation deal that he had. And that's been completely revoked, and now he does have to register as a sex offender. So justice delayed in that sense. I know a lot of people are happy that he does have to register as a sex offender considering his history, but the lack of jail time is still pretty unconscionable from the first that first trial. So we'll see what happens, but wanted to update everyone on that. So from that, let's go more local. We've got a couple stories here, one directly Charleston and the other one involving the State House. So first, let's do the Charleston one. And also, I should say, I kind of got ahead of myself here. The Alex Murdaugh stuff I talked about, I was pulling some information from a Live 5 News report from July 20th, if you want to go look at that. For the Bowen Turner stuff, I actually pulled it from a BuzzFeed News article, which you can also go see that one on their website. So now moving on, Charleston City Council sets rules for the King Street Business Improvement District. This comes from the Post and Courier. Some of these details that I'm about to explain, so you can check out their article. So here are some takeaways that you need to know. So this King Street Business Improvement District was approved by City Council a while ago. Now they're setting the rules for it. So here are the takeaways. We'll call it what they call it as well. The abbreviation is BID. So the BID imposes a fee on all commercial businesses on King Street between Broad and Line Streets. And then the Post and Courier gave this example of this fee. For example, $1 million commercial property, which under South Carolina law is assessed on 6% of its value, the new tax would amount to $678 per year. So if there's a $1 million commercial property, they're going to be paying essentially just shy of $680 more per year, and that will go towards this BID, this fund for the BID. The funds will then be used to keep the street clean and attractive, as the wording says in the the city council's rules. It may also fund an ambassador program that includes paid monitors who will walk the street offering directions and guidance to visitors, and also respond to any reported concerns about the homeless population. Again, I'm taking this from the rules from city council. All right, there's that. Seems like, this is something that kind of came up after some of the protests and some violence that happened around King Street. They're trying to make it look nicer. I don't know how this is going to help with that. I didn't think King Street was particularly dirty. There's a ton of trash that need to be picked up. But all right, they've got this program, and then apparently they're going to have random people walking around to offer guidance and assistance to visitors. All right, sure. I don't know if it was necessary, but okay, hey, they're trying something new, whatever. But then it gets a little bit more convoluted from there. So there's this group called the Charleston Downtown Alliance, which describes itself as a nonprofit entity, and they will actually operate the funds for the BID. Now, for some reason, this alliance's 9-person board, they're going to have a 9-person board, but for some reason, only two of the 9 people need to be city residents. So there's a board that controls funds for this improvement district that is not only just located downtown, but is only located at a section of King Street. But only 2 people on that 9-person board who are controlling the funds have to be city residents. Okay, that's a little bizarre for me. The other members can be from almost, not anywhere, but they can be from anywhere in Charleston, Berkeley, and Dorchester County. So at least it's, South Carolinians who are familiar with Charleston and downtown Charleston, but still kind of weird to me that not even like a simple majority or half, only 2 have to be from the city. Okay. Here's some other alliance board requirements. There has to be at least 1 woman, at least 1 racial or ethnic minority, and at least 1 business owner who, quote, rents rather than owns their commercial space. So again, it's great that they have a requirement that there's at least 1 woman, but again, on a 9-person board, you would hope it'd be more than that. Same with a racial or ethnic minority. And only 1 business owner who rents has to be on this board. I know they could get bogged down if they had higher requirements for all these things, but it just seems bizarre to me that you could potentially have this board of people controlling a fund for, what they say is to clean the street, but also an ambassador program, which who knows what they're really going to do. And the part about they respond to concerns about the homeless population, that kind of concerns me. Like, how are they going to handle that? What is that going to entail? They don't even have to have like a vested interest in this district. They don't even have to live in the city. Now, I know there's going to be people who own businesses downtown that don't live in the city proper, but again, it just seems weird that they're not going to require more people who could be directly affected by this beyond this alliance board. It's really interesting, and I'm concerned and interested to see where this goes. One last little detail, there's a proposed budget that shows that the Alliance would also accept funds from the, quote, public sector, fundraising, grants, and income from programs, end quote. So that money I mentioned that they're getting from the businesses, they will actually be also getting money. If people want to donate, they may have events or something and do fundraising. They may get grants whether it's state, national, or some other organization. So there's a potential for this fund to have a lot of money that could potentially absolutely be put towards good things. But there's also seems to be, it's pretty vague, and I know it's early, so it's hard to know for sure where these funds are going to go, how they're going to be used. And during the city council meeting, there were some folks who brought up concerns about this. And but despite that, not only was a business improvement district created, they've also started setting rules and created this downtown alliance group. So keep an eye on that. Like I said, just some concerning and confusing stuff that maybe are a perfectly normal explanation for, and everything will turn out fine. But just something to keep an eye on. Another thing to keep an eye on, and sorry we have to keep talking about this, but it's an ongoing issue and will be for a while. But the whole abortion debate, so as we've discussed with Roe v. Wade essentially being overturned, a lot of states had trigger laws that automatically started abortion bans in their state with different requirements. South Carolina, I thought, had a trigger law, but it turns out that it was something technical about it where it wasn't, but it didn't matter. They quickly passed a ban. But the ban that was put in place wasn't finalized. Governor Henry McMaster said he was going to work with a group. They wanted to, basically they just had something that was, if Roe v. Wade is overturned, we have something ready to go, quick to approve, and then we can debate the ins and outs of it later. And so they've been debating these things. So there is a couple proposals right now that if you're not already aware, I think you should be. So there's a proposal ban, abortion ban in South Carolina that would include no exceptions for rape or incest that has moved forward in the House, the South Carolina House. So there's like an ad hoc committee group who debated some things, and they've decided to move this one forward. So it is under debate, not the law yet, but there's no reason to think it won't be based on the members of our legislature. So anyway, that's moving forward, and you can learn more about this from the Post and Courier as well. Here are some takeaways from this. And by the way, the Republicans, who by and large are the ones supporting this legislation, say that they feel the unborn child shouldn't suffer for the crime of rape or incest, and that is their reasoning for why a woman would be forced to carry a baby that she doesn't want. Apparently it does not matter if you've been raped or a victim of incest. They do not care about your feelings, your mental health, or that child's mental health and feelings later if they find out, what happened. Just so there's that. Whatever. We've talked about this, and you all know my feelings on that. So here's some other takeaways from this. As I mentioned, no exceptions for rape or incest. The only exception is to save the pregnant person's life or prevent a serious lifelong health problem. We've already seen nationwide this being an issue when it comes down to how exactly do you determine that a person's life is in danger. There's a story that's out there of someone who had a pregnancy that was not viable. So it's not even, I don't want this child for whatever reason. It's a non-viable pregnancy, but because their life is not in danger, doctors didn't operate. They couldn't help her out until she hit such a terrible low that they could finally say her life is now in danger officially, and then they could operate. So they had to let a person deteriorate purposefully so that they could do the procedure they needed to do, because they felt they didn't have a choice, that they would be convicted of a crime. So we've seen this already be an issue, and this could very soon become an issue in South Carolina. And what are the punishments that people are afraid of? Well, one, anyone who, according to this proposal, anyone who provides an abortion that's not a medical emergency, anyone who pays for or sells pills for an abortion can be fined $10,000 and sent to prison for up to 2 years. So in that scenario, that's talking to doctors, healthcare providers. They've said the pregnant person in these situations would not face any charges. It's only the people who are actually performing the abortion, or, as I mentioned, paying for or selling pills in some capacity for abortion. The doctors could also lose their medical license. And although not currently in the proposal, some legislators have also made suggestions for the future. So even though this was pushed through to the next step, there's some that are like, we want to add some things, as debates continue in the House and then eventually the Senate. And some of these proposals I actually think are good considering where we're going. One, for instance, they want to make it easier and less expensive to adopt children in foster care in South Carolina. I think that's a good thing because we are already nationwide having so many issues with our foster care system, and there's so many children looking for homes. So making it easier and less expensive is a good thing. They also want to do more to provide women prenatal and postpartum health care. And they also might provide exceptions for fetal anomalies. So, some of the things we mentioned that other states are running into where there's a pregnancy that's not viable, but doctors can't perform what they think they need to because they're worried that they're going to be fined, jailed, lose their license, etc. So there's a potential that some things could be added to this legislation that will improve it, and I use that term very lightly because it's already horrific, or some things that will help on the other end of things. When there's children up for adoption, it'll be easier. So, there's that. But the main takeaways are this legislation that feels like it's from like, some past generation, which it kind of is. There's no exceptions. And the one exception they have is so vague at this point, we don't really know the punishments. So that's something to certainly keep an eye on. And obviously you can send messages to your House representatives, whoever, will listen in politics, that this should not be the case. There's also another proposal, though, another proposed bill, S1373, which would outlaw websites that tell people how to get an abortion. That is right. This was making the rounds last week. BuzzFeed News had it, believe it or not, first. Washington Post picked it up. Basically, it would make it illegal to aid, abet, or conspire with someone to obtain an abortion. It would also outlaw providing information over the internet or phone about how to obtain an abortion. In addition, it would make it illegal to host a website or provide an internet service, as they call it, with information that is, quote, reasonably likely to be used for an abortion, end quote, and directed at pregnant people in the state. So if I were to, on my website, Holy City Center, say, hey, you need an abortion and it doesn't fall under the exceptions here in South Carolina, here's the closest state where you can go get one, or here's where you can order an abortion pill if you are in the window where you can take one. If I were to do that, I could then be arrested and charged with a crime for doing that. So this is like essentially an internet censorship bill. I don't know how they would, what if a website that, someone in another state creates a website that's directed at people in South Carolina? How can they be held accountable? It's, again, a lot of vagaries, but the bottom line is it doesn't matter what the punishments are going to be or what they want to do. This is a censorship bill. You can't use your First Amendment right to talk about whatever you want to. It's just all the things that people were talking about when Roe v. Wade was overturned, like, oh my gosh, this could lead to this and this could lead to this. And a lot of people said, no, don't be ridiculous. They'll never pass that. They're just making it a states' rights issue. Yes, there are going to be some states where they're going to ban it with no exceptions. And we've seen South Carolina's trying to do that. But, all this other stuff, well, we're seeing it all. And just because it's proposed doesn't mean it's going to happen. But the fact that there are legislators in the state that, number one, thought this was a good idea, they also thought highly enough of it to propose it to be law. You know what I mean? Like, they weren't afraid to propose this. They knew that in this state, they would probably have a decent enough support for it that they weren't ashamed to try to propose this kind of legislation. It's just, it gets worse and worse. And sorry to share that information if you all hadn't seen that yet. Both these proposals are terrible for different reasons. Yeah, it's bad. So as well as that one, too, again, that one is S1373. Contact everyone if you think this is a bad idea and needs to be squashed, because it does. Yes, these are all my opinions, but it's also my podcast, and my opinions are all right, according to my fact checker, who is me. So, no, I know people differ on these issues, but come on, this is awful. So sorry to end on that low note, but these are important things that I think people need to look at, whether it's the business improvement district or these abortion proposed legislation. Vastly different issues, but ones that I think are important. And I appreciate y'all staying through to listen after I got the fun Forte Jazz Lounge incident out of the way and talked about the fun stuff I've been doing around town. I know it's not fun to talk about and listen to these things, but they're important. So yes, that's it for this episode. Number 55 is in the books. I don't know when our next episode is going to be at this moment. I don't have anything scheduled, but I'm working on some interviews, but also trying to, as I mentioned, possibly be planning a trip or having family here. So I'm also kind of holding out. So we don't know yet, but I will be back before too long with episode 56. It'll be another good one no matter what it is. I'm excited to continue on as the summer goes on here with some more great episodes. Hope you're all well. Thank you for listening. You can help out by rating and reviewing on any platforms that let you do that. You can also share this podcast with people you think would be interested in it, like retweets, all that good stuff on my social channels help out as well. You can support the podcast in two other ways. Go to patreon.com/holycitysinner. I was able to today give my Patreon subscribers a pre-sale code for Stevie Nicks, who is coming to the Credit One Stadium. Tickets go on sale when we're recording this tomorrow, but I had a pre-sale code that I could exclusively share with my Patreon subscribers. So now they don't have to wait and hope they get tickets tomorrow to what is surely to be a great show with the legendary Stevie Nicks. Or have to do the resale market later. So if you are a Patreon subscriber, you could have Stevie Nicks tickets in your hand right now. Yes, you would have had to pay for those tickets, but you would have them at face value. So just one of the many, many reasons to be a Patreon subscriber. You can also go to holycitycenter.com/shop to pick up some merchandise. Thank you to everyone who's bought merch over the last couple months. For number one, 50% went back to me and the website. The other 50% have been donated. Last month was We Are Family. So I was happy to be able to donate funds for merch sales to that. So thank you to everyone for doing that. This month we're donating to another organization, and already had some purchases, which is great this month. So when you hear this, is it still going to be July on Monday? It will not be, but that's okay. We're going to do something else in August. We're going to keep it going different, each month a different organization. But for this month, anybody who did buy merchandise, it's going towards the Carolina Abortion Fund, a not-for-profit organization, that's helping out, obviously, with providing accurate information for people who have questions about abortion. They've been around before, these recent rulings. This is an organization that's been in the community for a while, but they provide help and resources for people looking for abortions in North or South Carolina. So we'll be donating to that organization in a few days. So thank you to everyone who purchased merch for that. I'll keep you posted on where August merch sales will go towards. I have an idea, but I'll let you know in the next episode. Until then, stay safe out there. Enjoy your summer. I know some things are crappy, but there's still lots of good things out there as well. So try to balance out the good with the bad, and find some good stuff and surround yourself with good people to keep you sane. That's what I've had to do. Good friends, some fun events to not get dragged down in the crappiness that's going on in the world. So until then, as always, good night and good luck.